Thank you, Dave, for jumping in on that. So we have the wonderful Brooke Randel, who is a writer and editor in Chicago, and her writing has been published in Hippocampus, Hypertext Magazine, Jewish Fiction, and elsewhere. And we have Michelle Weinfeld, who is the author of From Generation to Generation, a memoir of food, family, and identity in the aftermath of the Shoah, an intergenerational memoir about her grandfather's experience surviving the Holocaust, the life lessons he taught her, and how being the grandchild of a survivor has influenced her identity. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Michelle, who's going to run the first part of our evening, and then Brooke will take over after that. We do encourage everybody to, if you can, to be on video. Obviously, I know it's not always possible, but please feel free. We'd love to see everybody's faces. I'm watching the chat, so if anybody has any questions at any point, please shoot them along. And Michelle, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexis. Thank you guys all so much for coming. We have such a wonderful crowd here tonight, and I'm really grateful that you guys took time out of your busy days to come participate in this program. The overall purpose of this workshop was to have an introduction to writing down our family stories. We recognize that people are at all levels of writing experience. They're at all stages of writing these stories. Some people may have already written something fully and want to have a community, while other people thought it was a cool idea and maybe haven't had any research or experience so far in finding their family story. And we also know that there are some people on this call that aren't 3Gs. And we're so happy to have you here with us as well. The goal of this is to go through, as a community, a huge attempt of just bringing us together. And then from here, potentially turning this into a series of some kind where we can all work through our writing processes together. So with that, we'll go into a couple of key bigger picture items before getting into any writing for today. The first which being motivation methods. I know that it can be really difficult to find the time. We're all busy and there's so much going on. And while this may be important to us, it's an incredibly daunting task to write anything, let alone a book. I don't know if that's your goal, to write an entire novel, if you want to write a short condensed version, whatever it may be. The most important part is being motivated. Blocking out specific time every day, even if it's 30 minutes, taking time to focus on what you're working on. Maybe every day doesn't work. Maybe you do it once a week, a couple times a week, but setting consistent time and setting goals for yourself is a huge way to keep motivated. You could do it by a word count goal, a time goal, and a book that I've read that has helped keep me motivated and keep my kind of artistic juices flowing is something called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. One of the methods that she uses is something called morning pages, where you wake up and you spend the first 5 minutes of your day just writing a little bit. You write one page. It could be how you're feeling. It could be about a dream. It could be about a list of all the things you need to do for the day. But your first thought is doing something creative. It was a really wonderful book. I encourage anybody who's interested to read it. Once you get into the actual writing process, these are probably some of the main things to work on before actually sitting down and writing anything. A seed is a motivation. It is your reason for doing what you're doing. Maybe it's a memory, the moment where you knew you wanted to start writing this. Maybe it's just a goal you have for yourself. Whatever it is, starting with that, the thing that got you here in the first place, is huge. And keeping that as a reminder to keep you motivated as you go. Of course, with all of us, this is a historical writing that we're doing. So there will be research involved. You can use primary sources. We actually have a slide after this outlining some incredible resources through the 3GNY website that you can use for your research, maybe using primary sources. If your grandparent is still alive and they're willing to speak, they are the best resource you can have, but many of us don't have that opportunity. So using other resources as well to help supplement can be incredibly helpful. And while we don't necessarily think about our survivor grandparents as characters, when we're writing, that's exactly what they are. We know them the way that we grew up with them, the way that we see them, or the way that we've heard about them in stories. And using that to build out a character is incredibly important. Understanding someone's motivations, what kept them going throughout all the hardship they experienced, what their goals, their dreams, their aspirations were before they were, Holocaust survivors. Who were they as people comes first. And once you understand that, it's much easier to develop out in an area where maybe you don't know exactly what happened. It helps you better be able to explain a situation because it would only make sense given someone's personality or someone's character that they would act or behave or speak in a certain way. Once we have our characters and we have the big picture of who they are, outlining and story structure come in. This is historical, so it doesn't necessarily need to be as much of a, okay, well, I'm in a magical world and there's a dragon I want there, and so I'm going to throw him in. Instead, seeing the key parts of your story, the beginning, the middle, the end, maybe important scenes, and then using that to help guide and move the story forward where you can fill in some of the gaps later. As I mentioned before, there are a ton of incredible resources on the 3GNY website. I don't know if any of you have used these before. For anybody that was in the We Do program, I know that you're probably very familiar with these, but there are so many incredible resources that you can go to with more and more information being released each and every day. I know in my experience, I've used the Yad Vashem United States Holocaust Memorial Museum website and the Arlson Archives personally, all of which are pretty user-friendly, if I say so myself. And the link, this presentation can be shared afterwards, and we can send the link to the 3GNY website also, so that anybody that needs somewhere to start, this is a great place. And within writing, there are two main ways that you can write your story. The first method is relatively intuitive. You create your outline, you know where your story is going, and you write linearly. You start at the beginning, wherever that may be for your story, and then you write everything in chronological order first. Doing this makes sure that you don't miss any areas. It sometimes feels more natural to just write things the way they happened and then fill in and add in details later. Or you could do something known as the popcorn method. You pick a couple of key moments, something that really stands out to you and speaks to you, and you write those scenes first. You write moments that you've heard in stories, and you expand out from there. You start with a couple of these big moments, and then as you go, you fill in information to tie them all together in between. One of these may speak to you more. Whatever it may be, there's not a right method, there's not a wrong method. It is whatever method works best for you in your experience. And I think that brings us to Brooke.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so hopefully thinking about writing is getting you excited about actually writing. We're going to do in a minute, very briefly on the idea of publication. Um, Writing and publishing are totally separate avenues. So if all you're interested in is writing and getting your story on paper, that's fantastic. But many people are also interested in sharing it. And so this is for those people who maybe are looking for what comes next after writing. I know some people are already kind of partway down their writing journey. Some people haven't started yet. So I'm just going to cover some super high level basics. This could be much more in depth, but just want to give people a taste. So first is to think about what you're publishing. You might not be publishing a book length work, and that's totally fine. There are opportunities to publish essays, stories, articles for shorter pieces. But if you are working on a book length work, there are three main ways to get a book out in the world. The first is self-publishing. This gives you a lot of control as an author. You'll make the most off each individual book sale, but it's also the most work. You have to do all of the marketing, all of the preparation. So it's the most intensive, but then there's the greatest earning potential with self-publishing. Then it's hybrid publishing, which is kind of this in-between method in which an author works with a publisher, but they share the upfront costs. So you are paying partially to cover production costs for the book, and you will earn a slightly higher amount because of that, based on each sale. So that's a good kind of way to have some support from a publisher, but not 100%, which would be our third option, traditional publishing. There are indie presses and major publishers that all fall into traditional publishing. And with those options, they're going to have full teams dedicated to marketing, design, publicity, and you'll be working closely with them as an author. So there's more support, but then the amount you earn is a little bit different per each book. So there's pluses and minuses to all of them. If you are approaching this part of the journey, definitely recommend doing more research to figure out which one is the best for you. All right, with that, we're going to get to our writing prompt. We are leaving time for question and answer after this. So if anything that either Michelle or I prompt questions, please save them. We definitely want to hear and help answer those. But we're going to start with a writing prompt, and the best way to improve as a writer is to read. And so we're going to start thinking about like Holocaust literature at a larger scale, and specifically this kind of emerging genre of 3G writing. So if we go to the next slide, I'll read this prompt. This is from Plunder by Menachem Kaiser. This is the opening to that book. My father's father, Menachem Kaiser, April 1977. This was 8 years before I was born. I didn't know him. We had no grandfather-grandson moments. I'd never given him a hug. He'd never given me gifts my parents weren't thrilled about. He'd never scolded me for running into the street or told me he loved me. To me, he was the father my father had once had, and that's it. I knew astonishingly little about him, much less than could be attributed to our lives' lack of overlap. What did I know? I knew the pit stops in the obituary. So this next slide, memory is so important to stories, even when it's not there, which this was a great example. Menachem Kaiser didn't ever meet his grandfather. Their lives didn't lap, and yet he creates a really vivid picture of the loss, all of the experiences he didn't get to have. So even the absence of memory is an important part of the story. So I have two prompts. Choose whichever one sparks something in you. If you do have like another writing project you want to use, or this prompt sparks something different in you and it takes you in a different avenue, go for it. This is kind of dedicating time So you're welcome to use it as you see fit. So the first prompt is introduce your grandparent or a member. I know we have a lot of people from the second generation here. So I say grandparent, but in your family that you're looking to examine, it could be a parent, could be a great grandparent. There are many people we might be interested in. Introduce your family member. What memories do you have of their mannerisms or habits? Bring in sensory details such as sound, smell, and touch. And if you get stuck, start with I remember and see what comes. And you can repeat that throughout your writing. I remember, and then say whatever comes to you next. The second prompt is what do you know about your family member and what do you not know? This is kind of what Menahem Kaiser's doing in his writing there. Explore the stretches and limits of your perspective by alternating between I know and I don't know. And if even kind of thinking about writing prose right now is overwhelming, you can also approach it as a pre-writing exercise where you're creating a list of what you know and what you don't know. And that can help inform your writing to come, your research to come. So whichever prompt is speaking to you, grab some paper or your laptop, computer, and I'm gonna give us 20 minutes just to focus and write. If you're on camera, you might want to just go off camera for this period, and I will give time updates as we go. And any questions, feel free to put in the chat and I'll be monitoring that. So go ahead and start writing.
And we'll stop the recording now just to save that 20 minutes of time.